Hi guys, I know I'm a little late getting this Halloween party started, but I've made it and I'll have 5 or 6 more looks coming your way this month that I'm very excited about, and I hope you are too. But for now, let's go ahead and get right into this pumpkin look, and I hope you enjoy it. We're starting this one off with the collar piece, and I'm using kind of a mid-toned eyeshadow on a detail brush to go in and rough out my design. I'm giving it a little V in the front, and I also wanted it a little bit off-centered, and then I wanted it to look leafy, so I'm adding some jagged, uneven edges, as well as some little curly pieces at the corners. Once I was happy with the shape, I'm going in with a green color cream from Makeup Forever, and I'm applying that inside my outlines using a dense foundation brush. I'm using mainly stippling motions to apply this because I find that I get a smoother blend without any brush strokes, and I'm building this up a couple layers so I have a pretty nice, even, opaque coat of green for my base. For the smaller areas, I'm using this flat, tapered, kind of pointed brush to help give me nice, clean edges. I'm also using a baby wipe to remove any areas of the green where I applied it out a bit too far. If you need to, you can always switch to an even smaller brush to get the super tiny details. And then once my base of green is done, I'm going in with a yellow grease makeup, and I'm very lightly stippling that over the green to start creating a bit of texture. I'm then going in with a couple different green eyeshadows, a lighter, more brighter shade, and then a darker, more muted shade. And I'm using a crease blending brush to stipple these colors kind of randomly all over to add more smudgy texture and dimension to the piece. And you can feel free to add more or less of this here, just depending on your preference. And then I'm using a very light green liquid lipstick to add some highlighting around the inside edges of the collar, leaving a little bit of space between the highlight and the edge, so I've still got a bit of a shadow there. I'm using my brush to fade that out into the base, and I'm also using my finger to stipple over that edge to help blend it out even more. And I'm building this up a couple layers to really brighten and pop that highlight. I'm finishing it off with my Ben Nye Neutral Set Colorless powder, gently stippling that over the top using a powder brush. And then once I have everything covered, I'm just wiping away any excess. With the collar piece finished for now, I've popped in my lenses from Samhain, and I'm starting off the face with an orange water-activated body paint. I'm applying this all over the face using a flat brush, leaving just the eye area and lips blank, and taking it back into the hairline, onto the ears, and down the neck to meet the collar. Then once I'm sufficiently orange, I'm taking a bit of the yellow grease makeup and stippling this over top of the orange paint, again using a fairly dense face brush. I'm doing this to even out the color application and to lighten up the orange as well. This makeup is nice and creamy, very easily blendable, and makes a great topper over water-activated paints. You don't have to do this, it's just how I like to do it. You'll rarely or never see me wearing just water-activated paint on my face because I really just prefer the finish and feel of pairing it with a cream or grease makeup. I'm building up the color slightly more to highlight the tops of the cheekbones, forehead, nose, and chin, then blending it all out. Next, I'm going in with a dark brown gel eyeliner and using a kind of dense, fluffy brush to apply it to the mobile lid, then switching it to a clean, smaller domed brush to start blending and buffing out the edges and applying along the lower lash line. I'm using a brush with a little of the yellow grease makeup on it to help blend out the edges as well. I wanted to create a super smoky eye for this, blended just above the crease and up to the inner part of the brow. So I've been binge watching a lot of Bob Ross lately, and I was feeling inspired to try this wet on wet painting and blending technique. So I'm actually doing a lot of the work before setting with powder, where typically I would set the grease makeup right away and then go in and detail. So if you're wondering how the blending is so smooth, this is really what helped me achieve that. So thank you, Bob, for the inspiration, and I think I'll be using this technique a lot more in the future as well. Still using the brown gel liner on the small domed brush, I'm creating this smile out from the corners of the mouth, kind of following my natural bone structure, but you could take it up into more of a smile if you wanted to kind of give it more of a creepier vibe. I'm then switching to a smaller detail brush to line the ridges of the pumpkin, again following the curves of my own bone structure as a guide to give the pumpkin head more of a defined face shape. Once I have the lines on, I'm using that domed brush with the leftover gel liner on it to darken a bit and blend and smoke out those lines to create shadows going onto the rounded parts of the pumpkin to start creating some dimension. I'm blending these lines into the eye makeup and smile as well. Then for the nose, I decided on a pretty standard skull nose shape with 2 points, taking one up higher than the other, outlining first and then filling it in. Again, this is all with the brown gel liner. You could also go for more of a jack-o'-lantern look with the shapes you create. You could take it in more of a clown direction, really whatever you want to do here. I'm again taking that domed brush and buffing along the edges to blend them out a bit into more of a soft shadow. Then continuing on lining and blending the rest of the ridges, and I decided to bring lines coming down from the nostrils as well, fading them into the lip. If I need to darken, I just go back in and line with the detail brush and blend out again. We do want the darkest parts of the shadows to be at the very center of those ridges. And don't forget to line along the lower section of the face and down onto the neck as well. I'm then taking the shader brush that had the yellow grease makeup on it and very gently running it along all the shadows for one final blend. So now I'm going in with my neutral set powder, packing it on very generously so everything is set in place, really making sure to get into all the cracks and crevices. Once I've got everything covered, I swipe away the excess powder with a clean, fluffy powder brush. Next, I'm applying a warmer fudge brown eyeshadow, basically wherever the gel liner is, starting with the eyes, and I'm blending this out just a little bit further than the gel liner to create another layer of shading. And I'm using an angled fluffy brush to apply this, but you don't have to use an angled brush, you can just use a regular fluffy brush. Doing the same for the nose, and then using a bigger contour brush, I'm contouring along the smile line, which in my case is where I would normally contour my cheeks. I'm creating the deepest shadow out near the ear and fading as it moves in, blending back onto the ears, up onto the temples, and around the forehead. I decided to blend this in further toward the corners of the mouth, and then I'm contouring under the lower lip and chin along the jawline and creating a more defined nose contour as well. I'm then using a dark brown pencil liner to line the lower waterline, setting that with the Fudge eyeshadow, then blending along the lash line, and I'm tightlining my eyes with this brown as well, just so everything is totally brown and we don't see any skin color peeking through. For the eyebrows, I'm first brushing out some of the other product that's built up on them, then lining and filling them in as I normally would using a dark brown brow pencil, just slightly thicker, sharper, and darker. Next, giving the lashes a curl and applying black mascara to top and bottom lashes to darken. You could pop on a pair of lashes here if you wanted to as well. Using a thinner, flatter eyeshadow brush, I'm applying the Fudge eyeshadow along the rest of the ridges and blending out with a slightly larger brush. I'm also rounding out the corners where the ridges meet the smile, eye makeup, and brows. Then with a cooler toned contour shade, I'm shading along the outer edge of the collar to create some dimension so it doesn't look completely flat against the skin. Again, applying with a thinner, flatter brush and blending out with a fluffier brush to soften. I'm doing this under the bottom of the collar piece as well, offsetting the shadows under the curly bits and making them slightly larger so they look more blown out and the little curly parts look more lifted off the skin. So here you can see the difference between the shaded and not shaded sides. To highlight, I'm using both a golden yellow eyeshadow as well as a white, and I'm first going in with the yellow and blending this down the center areas between each ridge. Be sure to use the brush small enough so you can apply mainly to those center areas and still have a little room to blend out without actually blending into the shadows of the ridges. After applying the yellow, I'm brightening those same areas even more with the white eyeshadow. Highlighting these areas will bring them forward, creating a more rounded dimensional shape. I then decided to contour down the sides of the neck and from the backs of the shoulders using the cooler toned contour shade, applying a little bit to the ears as well. With all the shading finished, I'm using a brown liquid liner to line down the center of all the ridges, doing my best to keep the ends super fine so they kind of fade out toward the eye makeup and smile / just the ends of the ridges in general. I'm outlining the nose shape as well, adding in a few finer jagged details. And once it's outlined, I'm applying more of the liner along the inside edge, and before it dries, I'm using my finger to blend and fade it in toward the center of the nose, creating a deeper shadow toward the edge. I'm also using this liner to outline the collar piece, both top and bottom. For the lips, I'm starting out with the same liquid lip I used to highlight the collar, applying this all over the lips, and the main reason I went with this color was to try and match my contacts a bit, so depending on what lenses you're wearing / if you're wearing lenses, you may decide to go with a different shade here. I'm then highlighting the center of the lips using the same yellow and white eyeshadows from earlier, and after that using the Fudge eyeshadow to shade along the edges of the lip line, blending and fading onto the lips. I decided to bring the green further out into the smile, which kind of ended up being covered by the brown, but I wanted at least to have it under there as a base. Then again, topping it with the yellow and white eyeshadows and continuing to shade with the brown along the edges. Then I darkened the brown eyeshadow along the smile as well as the cheek contour. And then all that's left is to line through the center of the smile line with the brown liquid liner, fading it out into the cheek contour and lining along the corners of the mouth where the green lipstick ended, fading it into the lip line and shading it just a little bit more with the brown. I then set everything with a little Fix Plus, and then after I put my wig on, I realized I needed to highlight the center of the nose as well, so just quickly did that using the yellow and white eyeshadows. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the first Halloween look of this season. Thank you always for watching, and I will see you in the next one.